Okay, in the last video about injection quantity, I'd reached a point where I'd effectively built an injection quantity that was going to be accepted for driving the vehicle of 60 milligrams at 5,000 revs per minute. This was like the extreme, obviously, but I am using the extreme because, like I said, you can tend to trust the extreme values better than you can others. Right, now, what happens then once you've got your accepted driving injection quantity? Well, one of the things that does happen, which isn't shown on here at all because it's a sort of an aside, but one of the first things that happens is that fuel temperature is checked to see if any adjustment should be made, because fuel behaves differently in terms of density, flow and burning depending on its current temperature. So whatever figures are here will be fed into a fuel map that's temperature dependent, just to check whether these should be altered slightly before going any further. I'm going to ignore that for the moment because it's not really relevant in the sense of just explaining overall what is going to go on. Okay, now at this point we've got two things that we need to do. We need to calculate a start of injection point, usually reduced to SOI because it's simpler to keep saying that or typing that. So we want a start of injection point, and at the same time we want an injection duration because we need to know how long we're going to inject for, because basically how long we inject for is the amount of fuel. So what I'll do is I'll go from here to here and look at this side first, even though it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly which of these is going on in which order, although you'll see that it's obvious which order they go on in once you look at which is dependent on which. Okay, so what we're going to do there is calculate the driving injection quantity but turn it into a duration. So to do that, the duration maps need to be examined. Now, to get to the duration maps, we need to look at duration selection map, because that will tell us which map to use. And when I say us, I mean the ECU. So the ECU will look at the appropriate map. Now, how does it know which map to look at? Well, it knows which map to look at because it gets its clue from when start of injection is going to occur. So it seems daft, doesn't it? I mean, here we are, we're going straight from the amount of fuel to how long we need to inject it for, but before we can decide how long we need to inject it for, we need to get the ECU to tell us when it's going to start injecting it. So although the first thing that you might consider is how long shall I inject the fuel for, the ECU can't really do that unless it's got some idea when the fuel is going to start being injected. So it's a bit like chicken and egg. It's a bit like saying which comes first. And in a way, this comes first because it has to be thought about first, but it can't be done. In other words, the calculations can't really be made correctly unless a start of injection point has already been considered. So you've got a situation where although this should be the first, it isn't. But it will always feel that way when in terms of fueling, I should think, to most people. Okay, but so there we go, we've picked a map. So start of injection has told us which duration map we should pick. So we picked a duration map, so I'll go down here, and there we are, we've got a chosen duration map, 5,000 revs, 60 milligrams, and if I use duration 1, and I'll just pinch this data off the file that I've been using for these videos, there I am, 44 degrees. So it's going to take 44 degrees, so I'm going to be injecting 60 milligrams, 5,000 revs per minute, and the duration of that injection is going to be 44 degrees. So I've now got my duration value, or at least I think I've got my duration value, because of course the problem is that all of this lot is going to be going on over here, and all of this lot is going to affect this. And how it affects this varies considerably, because if you look, it's fairly complicated over here. So start of injection isn't one thing. If start of injection had actually been one little box here and I could have said, right, here's the result, put that number over there, pick a map, it would be nice and simple. But in fact, if you look over here, you can see that there's quite a lot of complications going on here. There's 3 different choices for a start. So I've got 3 different possibilities. I've set them all at the same figure. They're all set at the same number. But I've got 3 different possibilities of number that could tell the selector which map to choose. So it's already a lot more complicated than it looks, because I'm just saying, wow, turn that number into a duration, job done. And it is that simple, but all this lot has got to be churned through before I can do it. And when I say I, again, of course, I mean before the ECU can do it. So I'm going to stop there at the moment and say, well, okay, we've sort of got the duration value and we've taken it off duration map 1. Doesn't matter which map we've used, I'm just doing that for now. Well, I'll stop there, because that way I can then start on the other side of this in a separate video, and you won't have gone completely mental trying to understand this bit and then switch across to the other side. So I'll stop there.